so sorry. I don't know if there's a proper way to make this apology, because there are not even words to describe the guilt and remorse that I feel each day for what I've done. The person that did that was not the real me, not the person I am, not what I'm made of, and not what I believe in. I don't think I ever thought that this would actually happen. I became scared and caught up in something that I did not want to do. I never realized the gravity of my actions and how many people I've hurt. I hurt the Neese family and those who love Skylar. I hurt my parents and shamed my family. I hurt my extended family and all of my friends who loved me. I hurt my teachers and those who believed in me. I hurt my church family, my community, and those who trusted me. And I hurt my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. May God bring eternal peace to Skylar and the entire Neese family. Again, I'm so sorry, and I pray each day for everyone involved, and I pray each day for forgiveness.
Yes, Your Honor. Well, Your Honor, there's nothing that I can say here today that would take away the pain and the heartache that the Neese family has and will endure. I further wish in no way to offend the Neese family by my statements here today, nor will I attempt to excuse or minimize the actions of Rachel Shoaf that took the life of Skylar Neese. The one thing I can say to this court and to the community is Rachel has accepted full and complete responsibility for her actions and expressed sincere remorse for what she has done.
Yes, Rachel Shoaf did tell us where Skylar was. Yes, Rachel Shoaf did cooperate. And Rachel Shoaf also murdered my daughter in cold blood. Skylar would not be where she was if it wasn't for Rachel Shoaf. You said yourself, Your Honor, this is first-degree murder. She should not give any leniency, and she can take her apologies and everything else and sit on them because that's about what they're worth to me and my wife. She has done nothing but make our lives a living hell since this day one. She did cooperate in the end because she knew that it was closing in on her, and yes, she would be caught. That's the only reason she feels remorse. Your Honor, I ask you to give her 40 years and plus if you can. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm Carol Michaud, and I'm Skylar's aunt and her mother's sister. And still to this day, we do not know why they did this. And that is a question we would like an answer to. Because what in the world would be so bad that you would have to kill Skylar and to put her through what you did? You didn't think about that when you were doing it, so why would we need to think about how you feel now? You stood there for over a year, comforting, being with us, telling us you knew nothing. When the police and everybody was coming close, then you decided to confess. You need to think about everything you put us, your family, and everyone else through with not being able to have the pleasures that other kids would have. No grandchildren, no marriages, no prom, no graduation. How do you think that would make us feel? You don't get it, and neither does Skylar, but at least your parents get to see your face, get to talk to you, and see you. We don't even get that luxury. They get to say goodbye to you. We never got to say goodbye or anything. And I hope that you really and truly regret for what you did, but it would never make us feel any better.
My name's Michael Neese. I'm Skylar's uncle. Yes, sir. I worked on this for a long time, kind of a therapeutic thing for myself. I picked up things along the way and excuse the less of emotionality if I may be over the top at some times, and I want to apologize ahead of time. First day, this all started when White called me at work and told me that Skylar was reported missing. Immediately, I made 200 flyers and drove over to my brother's home and asked him if he heard anything. Just complete silence from him. Seeing my brother so beside himself made me sick to my stomach. He walks me into her room, shows me where she climbed out of the window that night. I noticed right away Her clothes she was wearing to work were folded neatly on her bed. The cell phone charger was still left plugged in where she left it 3 days before. The room was very clean and the bed was made. So I started asking questions. Did she have a boyfriend? Was she having problems at home or work? She had no problems, he said. She took it upon herself to get a job and seemed kind of proud of it. Mary just comes home and introduces me to someone and says, "This is Skylar's uncle, and he loves her very much." I told her I heard Brian on the radio and I lost it. I leave there and I drive on to 705 and I go to the new Kroger. With flyers in hand, I started passing them around of people walking out of the store. And I couldn't understand why no one would take any flyers from me. So I began to start putting them on car windshields in the parking lot. Then I saw a man step out of his car and he asked me if I needed help. I looked at the car windshield reflection and my face was blood red and tears rolling down my face. I saw an older couple near their car, so I walked over to them and handed them a flyer. And the man says, "We're from out of town." I just broke down, walked to my car, and went home. I couldn't sleep for 3 days. Later that same week, my brother calls me to have me pick up some flyers for him at a print shop close to where I live. So my wife and I did this. We got there, and of course, no news. And Mary and Brant look like they haven't slept for days. While at their home, a police officer stops by to speak to my brother. And at first I thought, okay, this is it, we finally got some news. But he asked my brother for some flyers that I just brought in for his usage. The officer stated that Skylar was just full of herself and should be home soon. I was furious when you know from every ounce of your being she didn't run away. The helplessness I felt was tremendous. My wife and I head home a few minutes after the police officer leaves. He's standing in front of a bar in Star City holding up a flyer to a woman there. This is a total nightmare. Months have passed. No words from police. Conversations through Facebook have brought nothing but finger pointing to our family. And no one knows, other than their own conspiracy theories, of what happened to my niece. Other than the defendant sitting here today. I know my stress level reached peak on certain days because I drove home from work 4 times and couldn't remember how I got there. My wife and I drove all over, posting flyers at hurry businesses in some cases. We were turned away because it wasn't in our policy for us to put anything related to this type of thing, if you believe that. A month has passed. Rumors about a party in Blacksville was mentioned, so I stopped by my brother's home and let him know we were heading that way. When I got to the area of the high school, we stopped by a gas station and posted flyers. We saw some kids and started asking them about a party. One guy said he knew Skylar from Facebook, and the other one didn't want to talk to me. He drove out and eyeballed me the whole time. Well, we posted the flyer in the store and we headed home. News broke out about a body being found 5 months later in and around where we were, close to it. My wife said to me, I wish we would have driven further instead of going home that day. All the time during Skylar's disappearance. While in the car, my wife tells me to look for Skylar because she could be walking on the side of the road or sidewalk. And to this day, Your Honor, I'm still looking. I went to a candle birthday vigil in February to celebrate Skylar's birthday, all along fearing the body found in PA was hers. My brother goes down to Charleston, West Virginia to promote Skylar Neese law, knowing full well that body found was his daughter. My depression hit bottom when I noticed the flyers around town were being taken down and a realization my niece was never coming home. Vertigo has ruled over me in latter months to the point where I can't drive and all I seem to want to do is vomit. I can't watch the news anymore because I'm afraid I might see my brother pleading for information on his daughter. May 25th, 2013, I went to the murder site for the first time. My thoughts were simple, disgusted, raged, and anxious. My brother again stepped up to take homage where his daughter was found, but I can't. Too many variables for me to process because that is where Skylar fought for her life and lost. I'm still trying to make sense of this and I can't. While at the site I watched people show up and I really didn't talk to anyone and the silence was dismal. I saw Mary and my brother going down to the log lying on the ground. I assume that's where Skylar was found. I can hear sniffles from both of them, and again, so quiet. I saw branches piled up next to a tree and assumed that's where were found there and put there by the FBI, and of course I couldn't stop focusing on them. Mary said, speaking to Skylar, I told you about sneaking out. And my brother replied, you see where that got you? So sad. Someone passes a shovel down the hill where my brother tried to dig a hole and plant some flowers for his daughter. With every hit of the shovel hitting the ground, I jumped and then I had to turn away. Mostly I kept thinking I wish Brant would stop stepping all over Skylar. Towards the end, when the folks started talking, I leaned to my wife's car and Carol says, I just want to know why. A woman comes up and introduces herself and I heard someone say, Mike is starting to cry. So I restrained myself, said my goodbyes, and drove away, and I haven't been back there since. The last time I saw Skylar was at my mom's funeral. I walked up the steps, Skylar ran over to me and hugged me so hard. She put a kink in my neck. My daughter Sarah was going on and on how pretty Skylar was and even took a picture of her and shows me. I poked fun at her and remember her smiling at me when I did. She was always thoughtful to me and to everyone else. I never heard a mean word against her. My niece is a kind soul, smart and funny, and she touched my life for the better. This is a tragedy. It's merciless and never should have happened. I hope in doing this for her shows you all just how much she means to me. I also would like to point out here today, I know in my heart, Skylar fought that night for her life, and now she's gone. Your Honor, I'm here today to fight for her as hard as she did to stay alive. The admitted murder sitting here today has nothing but blatant disregard for human life and deserves the maximum sentence for her role, and I quote, this extremely horrific and vile crime she committed on my niece. All the lies Ms. Shoaf gave the family, authorities, and the community has me thinking she's lifeless inside with no regret other than getting caught. All the tweets, going to school, tanning beds at church camp. And let's not forget the Facebook statements should be truth enough to see right through her. She may have admitted to murder, but at what cost, Your Honor? Showing no emotion or care in the world for 6 months. Should be dealt with no compassion towards her because she never gave Skylar 1 ounce of mercy. All the families here are ruined because of her actions. Life for life is what I read in the Bible, and simply put, she deserves no free life. Her parents couldn't reach her for some reason, and I know my family has suffered the loss of a daughter, cousin, friend, and a niece. Not to mention, she'll never be able to experience being a wife, a mother, or a grandmother. Your Honor, this is solely your decision, and I will respect it. However, Ms. Shoaf getting a plea agreement just to protect herself, then I plead with you here today. 40 years, sir, the maximum by law for second-degree murder, reminding everyone here this was premeditated. It should have never been given a second degree on this act. Murder is murder. For the life she stolen from Skylar, she owes my niece hers. Believe me, sir, when I tell you Skylar is with us today, in our hearts, watching over us. She'll be with me the rest of my life. And as for the defendant, those given to harming others bear within themselves the seeds of their own destruction. Thank you very much.
Sir.
Skylar Neese disappeared on July 5th, 2012. This is what Rachel Shoaf finally told police on January 3rd, 2013. And this is information from the documentation of her statement to police on that day. She said, "We stabbed her," referring to herself and Sheila Eddy stabbing Skylar Neese. They killed Skylar because the girls always fought with Skylar, and she was, quote, in the way of the friendship between Rachel and Sheila. In the spring of 2012, Sheila and Rachel first joked about killing Skylar during science class when one of them said, "We should kill her." And they looked at each other with a sense of agreement on that statement. Sheila and Skylar, according to Rachel Shoaf, always fought, and the animosity between Skylar, or towards Skylar, intensified after Skylar accompanied Sheila to a beach vacation that summer. And we know from facts that such a vacation did occur. On July 5th, 2012, Sheila and Rachel agreed that it's today. Today was when they should commit the murder. Since springtime, the girls had several conversations about killing Skylar, and it was agreed that the murder should occur before Rachel left for church summer camp. The night was agreed upon because Skylar was working that night and into the evening and into the later evening, and she would be able to sneak out of her home easily after she had left work for the night. Over the month before the murder, Sheila and Rachel had planned some of the details and concluded that they needed to buy knives get a shovel, and go to Brave, Pennsylvania, where this murder would occur. So on July 5th, Rachel Shoaf took a shovel from her father's home. Sheila Eddy brought 2 knives that belonged to her mother. And they waited outside Skylar's home. They drove to her apartment that night. They called to say they were waiting for her. And she came out and met them, got into their car. Skylar was under the impression that the 3 girls were just going to drive around, maybe drive up to Brave, Pennsylvania, where they had been on other occasions, and smoke some marijuana. So she had brought along a bong with her, and Rachel Shoaf had brought along some other smoking pipe. When they arrived there at that location in the countryside, the 3 girls got out of the car and were out of the car for some moments when, at the agreed-upon signal of a countdown, 1, 2, 3, Rachel Shoaf and Sheila Eddy attacked Skylar Neese and stabbed her to death. Skylar attempted to run away, but Rachel Shoaf tackled her. She told police. Rachel Shoaf described the scene as having lots of blood, and it was never cleaned up. Following the attack, and blood remained on the gravel road. Rachel Shoaf estimated that Skylar was stabbed 10 times before she died. And she explained that during the attack, Skylar Neese's neck made weird sounds, and they both continued to stab her until those noises stopped. At the time of the murder, Skylar was dressed in a yellow tie-dye shirt and green shorts. She had taken a purse with her that was left in the car. They threw that purse away. They thought Skylar's cell phone would remain where her body was left. And in fact, it was found there, Your Honor. That day before taking Skylar in the dark of night, or through that evening, Rachel and Sheila drove around Star City and in the area, preparing themselves. They had concealed knives on their bodies that had been wrapped in towels by Sheila Eddy. And they took that shovel with them. And they arrived at Skylar's home and told her they were waiting for her. They were waiting to kill her. Your Honor, this heartrending case has consumed us from the date we became aware of Rachel Shoaf's disclosure to police. The disclosure that she and Sheila Eddy had deliberately, intentionally, and premeditatedly murdered Skylar Neese, according to a plan by which they had armed themselves with knives, had prepared to conceal Skylar's body after killing her, and had taken materials and extra clothing to clean up. We struggled first to accept the reality, and then for months we spent hours, days, and weeks trying to ensure that the cases of Rachel Shoaf and Sheila Eddy could both be set on a course to accomplish as much justice as possible. Since that time, people, reporters, have asked, well, what lessons can we learn from this? What have you learned from this crime? And I have to say, I'm baffled. But maybe one lesson is that the evil of which humans are capable passes understanding and seems boundless Maybe another one is that if this kind of crime can happen in this relatively small and cohesive community, it can happen anywhere. But these are not lessons that help me or anyone else, because I see no lesson here that tells us how to predict and prevent these heartless deeds. So as to why we're here today, for the sentencing of Rachel Shoaf, who participated in and committed such senseless evil, I only know how to speak as a law enforcement official and to ask for justice and for the lawful penalty to be imposed. We've heard and we're asked to believe that Rachel Shoaf has accepted full responsibility for the crime, that she solved the disappearance of Skylar Neese, that she's not the monster portrayed by the evidence. We're asked to believe that Rachel Shoaf finally became overwhelmed with guilt and remorse and freely confessed her crime. That Rachel Shoaf is a sort of hero in that regard. Not really, Your Honor, you know this case. Not really. In exchange for her statement on January 3rd, 2012, or 2013, Rachel Shoaf extracted a benefit in the form of a lesser plea. Let's not forget that the history of the investigation is that the two defendants were questioned by police repeatedly over a period of 5 and 6 months following Skylar's disappearance. Let's not forget that they lied repeatedly and that they were communicating with each other to keep their lies straight, to keep them consistent with each other. Here's a list of when Rachel Shoaf lied to police. July 19th, 2012. September 11th, 2012. November 6th, 2012. November 30th, 2012. But it was the November 30th, 2012 interview when her nerves began to fray. Her lies began to fragment. And the stories about when and where the defendants had last seen Skylar Neese began to fall apart. It was that November 30th, 2012 interview when Rachel Shoaf changed her lie a little bit. She added something. And Sheila Eddy's lie didn't catch up with Rachel's lie until December 1st, the next day. That's when Rachel Shoaf began to understand how she needed to and how she might be able to reduce her exposure. That's when she came in from the cold alone and first. That's when she confessed for a price. She sold her confession to police for the ultimate bargain of her plea to second-degree murder in West Virginia. That's what happens to solve some criminal cases. And to the extent that Rachel Shoaf's confession, for which she extracted this benefit, assisted the investigation, she has been compensated by the agreement for her plea to second-degree murder, and therewith her sentence of substantially less than a life term. That is her reward, and it is more than sufficient. It is often said that children should not die before parents, that it is not the normal and proper cycle of life and death. But parents do lose children, tragically to illness, to accident, to negligence, even murder. Murder by a stranger is a horror, but deliberate murder by friends is unthinkable. It must be unbearable for Dave and Mary Neese to contemplate the fact that Skylar's friends hated her so much that they took her in the dark of night and stabbed her to death even as she struggled for life. They were single-minded and relentless. When we go through troubled times, we may wake up on a morning that seems new and trouble-free for the few moments until the trouble comes back to our minds. I imagine that Dave and Mary Neese wake up some mornings and that there are an easy few minutes until the fact of Skylar's murder comes rushing back, and the unbearable must be borne again and again for the rest of their lives. Surely, no lesser sentence than those years of imprisonment available for second-degree murder is sufficient for justice here today. Surely, for this oh-so-adult crime of cold-blooded, planned, premeditated murder, there is no proper sentence other than an adult sentence. Surely, a sentence as a juvenile is unthinkable. If Rachel Shoaf has accepted full responsibility for her crime, she should not be asking to be sentenced as a juvenile. She should be willing to accept every day, every hour, and every minute of a proper adult sentence. Your Honor, you know this case. You know what a proper sentence would be. We ask that you impose that adult sentence.
Rachel Shoaf, for your conviction of the offense of murder in the second degree, the felony charged in the prosecutor's information in this case, it is the sentence of the court that you be imprisoned in the West Virginia State Penitentiary for a period of 30 years. The court assesses court costs as required by law, would order that you pay restitution in the amount of $921.71 to the West Virginia Crime Victims Fund, and in the amount of $7,262.22 to whoever ultimately assumes responsibility for that obligation, be it either the funeral home or the Crime Victims Fund in West Virginia or Pennsylvania or whoever. You will be jointly and severally liable for that obligation with your co-defendant Sheila Eddy. Although I don't recall addressing the issue of restitution at her sentencing hearing, so that will need to be addressed either by an agreed order or at a separate hearing, and you can take care of that at any time in the future.
Your Honor, just so you know, I have discussed that with Mr. Benninger, and we will enter an agreed order. We will offer that to the court
Very well.
in conjunction with this hearing.
Very well. Did not expect that it would be an issue. I would further order the defendant and Ms. Shoaf pay a one-time $10 fee to the Montague County Victim Witness Assistance Program consistent with the provisions in the code. The defendant has received the benefit of her bargain, and that was a plea to a lesser offense of murder in the second degree, an agreement by the federal authorities not to prosecute her federally, which is, I understand the law, they have every right to do, even and in spite of the pleas that were entered here, and the agreement of the authorities in the state of Pennsylvania not to prosecute her there, even though, as I understand the law, they have every right to do so. One other issue that I suppose needs to be addressed at this time, since the defendant is still a juvenile, and she will remain in a juvenile facility, and a hearing will be scheduled prior to her 18th birthday so that a determination can be made as required by law whether she will remain in a juvenile facility past her 18th birthday or will be transferred to an adult facility.